Welcome to 9 to 5 on the Side, the podcast for visionaries who work full-time but carry full-time dreams. I'm your host, Takinya Janae, award-winning entrepreneur, creative strategist, art therapist, believer, and someone who knows what it feels like to have a calling that won't let you sleep. Like and subscribe to all of our channels at thoughtful_endeavors. There's something I've been thinking about lately, and it keeps coming up in conversations around growth, leadership, and building something meaningful. We talk a lot about vision. We celebrate visionaries. We inspire and are inspired by big ideas. But what we don't always talk about is what happens after the vision. This episode is called Connecting the Parts, because vision alone isn't enough. At some point, the parts have to come together. Like and subscribe to all of our channels at thoughtful_endeavors. Some people are visionaries. They see it clearly. They can describe it and they feel it. They feel it. Some people are both visionaries and implementers. They can see it and they know how to walk it out. I'm one of those people. And then there are people who have vision, but don't yet have understanding or skill, the skill to implement what they see. And none of that is a problem until you're trying to build something real. Because when you don't have the ability to implement what you're trying to build, that's when connecting the parts becomes very important. That's when having the right people around you truly matters. Like and subscribe to all of our channels at thoughtful_endeavors. I want to pause here for a moment and make a distinction. So there are founders and there are CEOs. They aren't the same thing. They can be. But a founder is often someone who builds from the ground up. They're familiar with the work. They understand the function. They know what it takes to make the thing run. Some CEOs or owners step into businesses that are already established. They purchase something that's already had a system, had staff, and had structure. And that's valid. That's valid, right? A lot of CEOs do it this way. That's an investment. But when something is still being formed, when it's new, vision without implementation creates strain. In those early stages, the founder often has to be both, the one who sees it and the one who carries it out. Like and subscribe to all of our channels at thoughtful_endeavors. Especially when you're starting small with minimal funding. And even if you yourself, the founder, the visionary, are the sole source of funding, then you have to be visionary and the implementer. Or you have to recognize the circles around you to help you build your vision. There's a scripture that talks about the body, the head, the arms, the legs, the feet, and how each part serves a different function, but all of them are necessary. If we look at business in the same way, it makes sense. The head carries the vision, the arms do the work, the legs move things forward. Sometimes the founder is the head and the legs. Sometimes the founder is the head, the legs, and the arms. Sometimes you're thinking it through and walking it out at the same time. Growth happens when the right parts are in the right places. But strain can happen when someone is forced to function where they do not belong. This actually connects to something I talk about in the book, in the chapter called Purposeful Connections, because the people around you aren't accidental. They're not just there for encouragement or proximity. They each serve a function. Purposeful connections are about knowing who belongs where, not just who's available, not just who you like, but who helps the vision move. Like and subscribe to all of our channels at thoughtful_endeavors. So let me give a personal example. One of my businesses is a therapeutic art-based business called Expressive Art Services. Within that space, there are multiple roles: piano instructor, percussion facilitator, arts and visual arts facilitators, digital literacy, and STEAM facilitators. Each role matters. Each role serves a purpose, a different purpose. Now, here's what's important. Every one of those areas is something I trained in for years. I built the system. I understood the flow, and then I shared that system with the facilitators who now serve in those roles. Because this started as a small business, there were some times when the facilitators couldn't show up. And in those moments, the service could not stop. It didn't stop. I could step in and I could facilitate for that day or that session. Didn't have to cancel it because I was fully equipped to do so. And that's what I mean when I say that early on, especially in small business, the visionary is often the implementer as well, or has to be the implementer as well. Not because you don't value help, but because the weight of the business sits with you. It's on you. Like and subscribe to all of our channels at thoughtful_endeavors. When you have a small team, 4 to 5 people, the flow of business depends on preparation, trust, and coverage. Life happens, things happen, and you don't want the integrity of what you've built to fall apart because someone wasn't available to show up that day. That's why I'm very intentional about who I decide to include, about the circles that I keep, about the people I trust with responsibility, and the types of business I choose to build. Every connection affects the flow. Every role affects the integrity of the work. From a personal perspective, when I start something new, I make sure that I am well versed in it before I share it with someone else. Not perfect, but capable. You can grow while building, and you can learn along the way. But it's very difficult to be credible and viable if you're not familiar with what you're promoting before you start broadcasting it, especially when you're starting small. So when I talk about connecting the parts, I'm not talking about doing everything alone. I'm talking about responsibility. I'm talking about preparation. I'm talking about building with integrity. I'm talking about being mindful of the circles you keep and the ones that you choose to connect to what you're building. Vision gives direction. Implementation gives movement. People provide sustainability. And growth happens when you stop forcing every connection and start connecting the parts, the right parts. Like and subscribe to all of our channels at thoughtful_endeavors. Thank you for listening to 9 to 5 on the side. If this episode spoke to you, share it with someone who's building their dream right alongside their responsibilities. Don't forget to grab a copy of the book, the workbook, or the audiobook, and join me for one of our live trainings where we turn ideas into action. Connect with me on Instagram at Thoughtful Endeavors and on LinkedIn under Takinya Janae for daily strategies, encouragement, and purpose-driven insight. Until next time, stay grounded, stay encouraged, stay faithful to the work you're called to build, and most importantly, do it for you. Like and subscribe to all of our channels at thoughtful_endeavors.